Imagine waking up in silence, no alarm, no buzzing phone, no hum of electricity. Just silence, broken only by the faint rustle of straw beneath your head. You open your eyes, and for a moment, the world feels wrong. The ceiling isn't plaster or paint but dark wooden beams streaked with soot. The air smells of smoke, damp earth, and something unfamiliar, animal fat and ash. You try to move, and the rough texture of wool scratches your skin. You're not in your room anymore. Not even close. The first sound you hear is the creak of a door. Light slips in, faint, golden, and dusty, and with it comes the figure of a woman. Her face is pale, her hair wrapped in a linen cloth, and her hands are calloused but careful as she carries a small bowl of water. When she notices you, she freezes. Her eyes narrow, wary, then soft with confusion. "You live," she whispers in a voice touched by centuries. You try to answer, but the words come out tangled, your throat dry. She doesn't understand your accent. To her, your words are strange, too smooth, too modern. You rise slowly, feeling dizzy, your mind spinning through explanations. A dream? A prank? But the cold air biting at your skin feels too real. The woman gestures for you to stay down. "Rest," she says in broken English, the kind that feels carved from an older time. You struck your head. The storm brought you here. Outside, you hear the sound of a rooster crowing and the distant clang of metal. You drag yourself to the door despite her protests. The moment you step outside, the world changes. The sky seems bigger, the air thicker, heavier. Muddy roads crisscross between wooden cottages. Smoke rises from chimneys made of stone. Chickens scatter as children in tattered clothes run barefoot through puddles. And then you see it, the church steeple, the center of the village, worn but proud, bells tolling softly for morning prayer. You've seen pictures of the medieval world before, in books, in shows, but standing in it feels like stepping inside history itself. You try to breathe it in, to believe it, but it's impossible. "This can't be real," you murmur, yet the wind stings your eyes, the ground stains your feet, and the smell of smoke clings to your skin. Everything is real. The woman introduces herself as Alice. She lives alone, her husband lost to fever the winter before. Her cottage is small, barely a room and a hearth, but she offers you shelter, perhaps out of pity, perhaps out of loneliness. You learn to mimic her words, her gestures, her rhythms. You fetch water from the well, chop wood in the forest, help patch her roof. Days pass slowly, like candlelight flickering across old stone. And in that slowness, something inside you begins to quiet. You notice things you'd never seen before, the way the mist curls above the fields at dawn, how the sunlight turns gold when it touches wet hay, how silence isn't emptiness but music made of wind and breath. Alice teaches you to grind grain, to mend torn cloth, to pray before meals. She speaks often of faith, of saints, of small miracles hidden in daily life. Her voice carries a tired warmth, as though she's learned peace through suffering. At night, you lie awake listening to the sounds of the village, dogs barking, rain dripping through the roof, distant laughter from the alehouse. Sometimes, you wonder if anyone from your time is looking for you. But the thought fades quickly. Time feels softer here, less defined. There are no clocks, no deadlines, no noise, just life, slow and imperfect, but real. Then one day, you follow Alice to the village market. Stalls line the muddy square, selling bread, salted fish, herbs, and wool. The people stare at you, your strange clothes, your clean hands, your unfamiliar accent. You hear whispers, a foreigner, a traveler from the north. But among them, you see kindness too. A farmer shares a smile, a child offers you a flower made of straw. You realize how fragile and yet how human this world is. Every face carries a story, every story carries struggle. Weeks turn to months. You become part of the rhythm. You work, eat, pray, and laugh. The world you came from feels like a fading dream, bright but hollow. Here, life is hard but full. You find yourself admiring Alice's strength, the way she endures hunger with grace, how she smiles even when her hands bleed from work. One night by the fire, she tells you about her lost child, taken by fever years ago. Her eyes shimmer in the dim light. The world tests us, she says quietly, but even in sorrow, there is God. Her faith confuses you, yet it touches something deep inside, a kind of peace you never knew you were missing. For the first time in years, you feel present. But peace never lasts long. One morning, the church bell rings not for prayer, but for warning. The priest shouts from the square, "Travelers from the south bring news, death is spreading. A sickness, black and fast, devouring towns like wildfire." The villagers cross themselves. Mothers clutch their children. Alice's face turns pale. "The pestilence," she whispers. "It comes again." The days that follow are filled with fear. People avoid the roads. Smoke from burning herbs fills the air. Alice prays longer, harder, her voice trembling as she kneels before the small wooden cross in her home. You try to reassure her, to find logic, but logic doesn't belong here. Science is centuries away. There are only prayers, charms, and hope. Then it happens. The first coughs begin. A boy in the village falls sick, his skin darkens, his breathing ragged. Within days, he's gone. More follow. The bell tolls endlessly. You help dig graves until your hands blister. The earth is cold, heavy, unyielding. Each mound of dirt feels like a memory being buried alive. Alice grows weak soon after. She hides it from you at first, but you notice, the trembling hands, the shallow breaths, the fevered skin. She tries to smile. "It is nothing," she says, but her eyes say otherwise. You sit beside her night after night, bringing water, wiping sweat from her brow. You tell her stories from your world, of lights brighter than fire, of cities taller than mountains, of cures that save the dying. She listens with wonder, as if hearing tales from heaven. As her strength fades, she grips your hand. "Don't forget," she whispers. "Even when you wake." You don't understand what she means, but her voice stays in your mind long after her eyes close. The morning she dies, the world feels colder. You bury her yourself beneath the willow near her cottage. The church bell tolls again, slower now, heavier, like the heartbeat of a dying world. You stand there, staring at the mound of earth, realizing how much she had given you, a glimpse into what life means when stripped of everything except survival and love. You return to the cottage that night, exhausted. The fire crackles faintly, shadows dancing across the walls. You sit in silence, remembering her words. Even when you wake. The thought repeats in your head, over and over, until your eyes grow heavy. The world fades to black. When you open them again, everything is still. The fire is gone. The air feels different. Warmer. You blink, and see your room. Your real room. The hum of traffic outside, the soft glow of your phone screen. You sit up, heart racing. It's over. Or maybe it never was. But when you look at your hands, you pause. There's dirt under your nails. The faint smell of smoke still clings to your skin. And on the windowsill, where no one could have placed it, lies a single sprig of dried lavender. When Ethan woke that morning, the light was too bright. It cut across his room in clean, modern lines, no smoke, no dust, no fog curling through the rafters. The air smelled of detergent and city air, not of damp hay or burning wood. For a long moment, he didn't move. He just sat there, listening. The faint hum of traffic, the whisper of wind against glass, the murmur of a television in a neighboring apartment. It all felt strange, familiar, yet distant, like hearing a song you used to love but can no longer feel. He rose from the bed slowly. The floor was cold beneath his feet, too smooth, too perfect. He walked to the window and stared out at the city. Cars rolled by, people hurried along the sidewalks, phones in their hands, faces buried in glowing screens. Everything moved too fast. The colors were too bright, the sounds too loud. He pressed his palm against the glass and whispered, "I'm back." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure what back meant anymore. He showered, ate breakfast, turned on the TV, all the small things that once filled his days, but everything felt hollow. The taste of coffee was sharp and sterile compared to Alice's bitter barley drink. His clothes felt weightless and strange after weeks of rough wool and leather. The world was clean, efficient, and utterly soulless. He missed the uneven rhythm of medieval life, the clatter of wooden bowls, the laughter of children chasing chickens, the comfort of a fire shared with someone who had nothing yet gave everything. Days passed, but Ethan couldn't escape the echo of that other life. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Alice. Her smile, her trembling hands, the candlelight flickering against her tired face. Her last words haunted him, even when you wake. What had she meant? Was it a warning? A blessing? Or maybe it was both. He started noticing things he'd never cared about before. The way people avoided eye contact in the street. The way they rushed past each other without a word. He watched them, all trapped in their own worlds, and felt a strange sadness. In the village, every glance had meaning, every silence carried weight. Here, it was as if humanity had been wrapped in glass, visible but untouchable. One evening, he wandered into an old bookstore near the edge of town. The bell above the door chimed softly, and the air smelled of paper and dust. He drifted between the aisles, fingers brushing the spines of history books. Then he stopped. There, on a faded shelf, lay a book titled Chronicles of the Plague Years. Its pages were yellowed, its cover cracked. When he opened it, his breath caught. There she was. Alice. Not in name, but in story. The entry described a small English village, struck by the plague in 1348. It mentioned a widow who cared for the sick until she fell ill herself, buried under a willow tree by an unnamed traveler of foreign speech. Ethan's hands trembled. His throat tightened. The description was exact: the cottage, the fields, the willow. Everything. It wasn't a dream. It couldn't have been. He sat there for hours, staring at the page. The idea that he had truly lived there, truly touched that world, filled him with awe and grief. He closed the book gently, as if afraid to disturb her memory. When he stepped back outside, the city lights looked softer, almost fragile. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began to change. He no longer rushed through his days. He stopped checking his phone every few minutes. He walked instead of driving, noticing the way sunlight filtered through trees, the way rain painted silver trails down windows. He started smiling at strangers. Some looked surprised, others smiled back. It was small, but it was real. He began volunteering at a community kitchen downtown, a place for the homeless, the forgotten. The air inside was filled with the smell of soup and old wood, the clatter of plates, the murmur of tired voices. At first, he felt out of place, but soon, something clicked. The work, the simplicity of feeding people, listening to their stories, brought back the same quiet sense of meaning he'd found in Alice's world. One of the older volunteers, a kind woman named Margaret, noticed his calmness. "You've got an old soul," she said with a smile. Ethan only nodded. "Older than you think." Every night, he lit a single candle by his window. Not out of ritual, but remembrance. The soft flame reminded him of her cottage, the flicker of hope in a dark world. Sometimes he'd talk to her in whispers, as if she were listening across the centuries. "I didn't forget," he'd say. "I kept my promise." One rainy evening, while walking home, Ethan found himself drawn to a museum he'd never visited before. Inside, among relics of stone and iron, he stumbled upon an exhibit titled Everyday Life in the Middle Ages. There were clay pots, woven baskets, rusted tools, ordinary things made extraordinary by time. He stopped before a small wooden cross displayed in a glass case. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Recovered from a plague burial near Lincolnshire, 1348. He stared at it for a long time, his reflection faintly merging with the glass. Something inside him shifted. He felt as if the world itself was whispering to him, reminding him that the past never truly dies, it only sleeps beneath the dust, waiting for those who still remember. After that night, Ethan began keeping a journal. Not of his modern life, but of hers. Every detail he could recall, her voice, her laughter, her prayers, he wrote it down. It became a way to honor her, to give permanence to what time tried to erase. Some nights, he'd wake from dreams of the medieval village, the church bell ringing, the wind carrying distant cries. He no longer feared it. Instead, he felt grateful, like he'd been given a secret glimpse of what it meant to live when life was fragile and sacred. Seasons passed. The world around him moved as fast as ever, but Ethan lived differently. People noticed. Friends asked what had changed. He'd only smile and say, "I learned to listen." Because that's what the medieval world had taught him, to listen to silence, to nature, to the heartbeats of others. One evening in late autumn, he returned to the countryside for the first time in years. The city lights faded behind him, replaced by open fields and winding roads. The air smelled of wet earth, the same scent he remembered from that other life. He parked near an old church that stood alone against the horizon. Beside it grew a large willow tree, its branches bending low as if guarding something precious. Ethan walked toward it slowly, heart pounding. Beneath the roots, a small stone marked a grave. The inscription was weathered and faint, but he could make out a single word, Alice. He knelt beside it, his hand trembling as he brushed away the moss. The world felt still, as if time itself was holding its breath. "I found you," he whispered. "I didn't forget." Tears filled his eyes, but they were not tears of sadness, they were gratitude. He felt the breeze move gently through the willow branches, brushing against his face like a farewell touch. For a moment, he swore he heard her voice, soft, kind, carried on the wind. "You lived," it said. "That's enough." He stayed there until the sun sank behind the fields, the sky turning the same golden hue he remembered from the mornings of that other time. Then, as the first stars appeared, he rose and began to walk back. But just before he turned away, something caught his eye, a small sprig of lavender growing at the base of the stone. He smiled. The same flower that had been on his windowsill that morning he woke up. He picked it gently and tucked it into his jacket pocket. As he drove home through the quiet countryside, he felt lighter than he had in years. The past and present no longer felt separate, they had become one. He understood now that maybe he hadn't traveled through time at all. Maybe the medieval world had been a dream meant to remind him of something the modern world had forgotten: how to be still, how to care, how to see. That night, he placed the lavender beside his candle and wrote in his journal for the last time. His handwriting was steady, his words simple. "Alice, I kept my promise. I did not forget you. I live each day as you lived, with faith, with kindness, and with gratitude. You taught me that time does not measure life, love does. Wherever you are, I hope you found peace. You gave me mine." He closed the book, blew out the candle, and lay down. The city outside was quiet for once, as if the world itself was resting. He closed his eyes, and the soft whisper of the medieval wind returned, carrying him into a dream, not of the past, not of the future, but of a place where both met in eternal stillness. And in that stillness, beneath the willow tree of memory and time, two souls finally rested together, one from the 14th century, one from the 21st, united not by time, but by understanding. Because sometimes, the greatest journey isn't through centuries or dreams, but through the heart learning how to wake, truly wake, into the beauty of being alive.